Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, whenever and wherever you're listening to this. Welcome to another episode of Blue Seats Live. It is producer JL here today. Rob and Dave have the night off. Rob is doing his fatherly duties as always, and so is Dave. Dave is in somewhere at a happy theme park that I won't, describe, but Dave's in hell. No, Dave is somewhere. I just made all that up. Anyways, it's me and it is Nick with us here today, fellow blog contributor, Brooklyn Joker 90. Nick, how the heck are you?
I mean, 4 straight days of just winning at Madison Square Garden. There's nothing better. I am over the
Can't beat
moon.
it. Yes.
I mean, you said Dave's in hell. I think the only ones that are in hell right now are the Carolina Hurricanes and the Indiana Pacers.
Hey-o. Good zinger. I like it.
Thank
But
you.
it's true, though. But it's true, though. Madison Square Garden. Good segue into what we're about to talk about. Madison Square Garden has been basically the garden, and the garden is Eden. If you heard that saying before, Madison Square Garden, the vibes are immaculate, as they say, and obviously the Knicks, as we record this, the Knicks just defeated the Indiana Pacers to take a 2-0 lead in their series. And the night prior to when we recorded this, our very beloved New York Rangers have taken a 2-0 lead against the Carolina Hurricanes. Yesterday's game, which would be 2 days from now when we release this, Vincent Trocheck scored in a double overtime on a power play goal after Brady Shea thought it was a good idea to cross-check him in the back. So just real quick before we really get into it, I'm just elated through the roof, and there's a lot of things that we'll go into, but it's just everything just feels so good. Everything is just so nice, and I'm getting all the nice pleasantries out of the way because I've been thinking about this all day. Ever since '94. The vibes are just good, man. I'm just like goofy right now. I know this is a stupid way to start the podcast, but let's get right into it, Nick. So, Rangers have a 2-0 lead in this series. Just give me your thoughts on the double overtime winner, that game, the performances of some of the players, and even game one, so to speak, on what the Rangers did and how they were able to kind of keep Carolina away from really kind of playing their game, with the high volume shots and the nice rebounds on net.
This is where this series and this is where the coaching hire really comes into effect, and you really see the difference that Peter Laviolette has made as Rangers head coach. Because this is a game that a couple of years ago the New York Rangers don't win. And honestly, I think if we're really being honest here, if you're looking at this, I think that 2 years ago, I think this Ranger team, if it was 2 years ago, is down 0-2 after 2 games, because they wouldn't have been as well prepared and ready to take on the Carolina Hurricanes like they have been so far this series. I think Peter Laviolette and his entire staff deserve so much credit for how they've prepped and got this team ready for battle, because you really see how disciplined the Rangers have been, and you see just the compete level, the battle level, the overall intensity and attention to detail. I know the first period yesterday wasn't the best, because when you saw Carolina was really getting some high danger looks against Igor Shesterkin. But then as the game went on and the Rangers found their legs and they found themselves, you saw just how disciplined and how good this Ranger team is defensively, because there were chances, especially, in the overtime or in the third period when the Canes had a power play. Aho had a shot on Shesterkin. The Rangers had everybody boxed out. There was no screen, There was no second chance opportunity, and even if there was, it was not going to be a Carolina Hurricane who got the puck.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is just absolutely massive when you look at things, because that's how Carolina makes their that's how they make their living. They make their living on throwing shots from every angle and just trying to crash the net.
Yep.
So the fact that the Rangers in a late game situation on the penalty kill had the entire house protected, it just shows you the level of detail and care that this coaching staff has put into the game plan of attacking Carolina.
Right. And you make a lot of good points there when it comes to just how the team is and the structure and comparing it to years past. You're absolutely right. I mean, we do have a sample size for what you're talking about, because this exact thing, the exact scenario you mentioned, did happen with the Rangers going down, 2-0 against Carolina 2 years ago. And you kind of had this sense of um I don't wanna say dread, but you just kind of felt like they always had to kinda work from from back up, if that makes any sense. But they have to always kinda come from behind to come back and make a statement. Now, like you alluded to with Peter Laviolette, they've done a good job in, you said preparing the players, keeping them interested, keeping them engaged. And one of the things that I really admire about Laviolette is that he's not afraid to not only take chances, but he's also willing to make a change when he needs to. And not only has this shown throughout the season, but it's definitely shown throughout the series. If there's one thing that Dave always likes to talk about, is Dave always likes to talk about finally having a coach that is good with matchups. And Peter Laviolette has done a phenomenal job at uh, matching the skill players that he has on the team with what's out there on the ice for the opposing team. And it's worked out in the Rangers' favor. And another thing you mentioned too is that, you know, they just seem so well prepared at keeping Carolina, you know, just away from their game. With Gerard Gallant, everything was kind of up in the air, and, things just kinda the players essentially had to dictate themselves, but when the Rangers finally got some structure, and let's give credit where credit is due. You have Peter Laviolette, and of course, you have Michael Pekka, Phil Housley, Dan Muse, and the rest of the staff. They've done a phenomenal. Christian Hamura, the skills coach, that played a lot into players like Lafreniere and Capo Caco, because it seems like the Rangers for many years in that department have been robbed. And you're beginning to see the culmination of everything come together. And I want to touch on something that you said too when you talk about just defensive structure and systems and all that. A lot of people on Twitter were going out and saying that, and who I'm referring to when I mention this.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people were beginning to say that the Carolina Hurricanes had a special teams advantage right even before the series started. And anyone, and I'm not going to say the person's name, but everyone who's listening to this will know exactly who I'm talking about. It's a gentleman with a lot of letters in his name. They they basically alluded to he basically alluded to the fact that Carolina had the better man advantage. And now you look at 2 games in, not that we're throwing champagne parties just yet, but the Carolina Hurricanes, as of this recording, have not scored a power play goal. The Rangers penalty kill has been phenomenal. They have just been nothing but stellar in not only keeping Carolina away from getting their second chances, but also basically keeping them from the perimeter. And while they're going to continue being a high volume chance team, the high danger chances are either equal or slightly favor the Rangers, and that's good. Now, let's touch on another thing here. Obviously, this is a team game, but you cannot totally discredit the effort and play of Igor Shesterkin. You know, Looking all the way back in January, I was listening to WFAN of all things, and they were actually talking hockey, which was like 50% interesting, and then 50% I want my ears to bleed. Okay, because if I have to hear Evan Roberts try and talk hockey again, being the Islander fan he is, I think I'm going to vomit. But anyways, he made a good point where he was talking about Jonathan Quick, and obviously we saw the report that after the game when Emily Kaplan interviewed Vincent Trocheck, he essentially alluded to the fact that Jonathan Quick was the one that got the boys, fired up on, in the dugout. Listen to me, I'm thinking baseball in the locker room. and pretty much got them, gave them a nice little jolt. So, um, Jonathan Quick early on in the season, we all thought was going to take over the starting role, but then running back to Igor Shesterkin got a couple days off and has now uh, basically allowed this team to ride off his coattails, and it's worked. And I know you mentioned this, right before we started recording, but I figured you could mention it again. Igor kind of looks like somebody that we're pretty familiar with.
Oh my God, yeah, and you really saw it last night. I mean, they showed that the other night where Igor has now, I think he notched like his third or fourth 40 plus save game in the postseason. And then number one is, we all know Henrik Lundqvist, which is just incredible because there were nights in the playoffs when Hank was a Ranger where it was just like, yeah, he's not letting us lose. They could throw 100 shots at the net. It's not going to matter. He's just not letting them lose. That was Igor in game two.
Mm-hmm.
After the Gensel goal, Igor pretty much, I don't know what was said during intermission, but it was pretty much okay, boys. I will hold us in it as long as you need because I'm just not letting another one go past home. And I'll tell you what, the save he made on Sebastian Aho in overtime, where Aho,
Beautiful.
I mean, just came. It reminded me of a glitch goal in NHL in Hut, where that Aho was going for, and Igor was just like, "Yeah, no, son, sorry, not today." I mean, it was just one of those. Igor was just, yeah, we're just. I'm not letting the boys lose. You're only getting three, and that's all you're getting. It was just unbelievable the effort that Shesterkin has put forward. And I mean, when you talk about Jonathan Quick, I really don't know if people appreciate him the way that they should. And I know like a lot of Ranger fans still hold ill will for 2014. I look, I'm not happy that we lost that series, but the better team in 2014 won. LA was the better team. I can admit that even as a Ranger fan,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't have the better goalie. But Jonathan Quick played out of his mind in that series. But you really see the when people like to talk about championship pedigree, and I know that's part of the reason why the Rangers went out and they paid Barclay Goodrow, but they have championship pedigree in Jonathan Quick, who knows what it takes, who's been on those teams and on in the grind, with a team that was an 8 seed that had no expectations that won a Stanley Cup, to the 2014 Kings, who were one of the best teams in the league. He's been around great leaders like Andrei Kopitar, Drew Doughty, Dustin Brown, Jeff Carter, Mike Richards, Jared Stoll. I mean, the list goes on with the talent that LA had. So you can only imagine when he says something in the room, players, I think it definitely grabs him because, goalies aren't going to say much. So when they step up and say something, guys listen. And I think he's been a huge godsend for Igor, just in the not only in the aspect of just giving Igor a rest and having a capable backup. I think mentally, Quick, because he does have that experience of carrying two teams to Stanley Cups, that he can lend that experience to Igor and just let him know, okay, look, you're doing all you can. Don't try and overdo it. You're doing the best that you can. Let the boys in front of you figure it out. We have the talent. So I definitely think there's a valuable aspect there for Igor, and not only just the rest of the team, but I really think Quick has been huge in that kind of standpoint.
Right. And this goes back to the whole coaches thing. A lot of people tend to underestimate the value of having a coach who can cultivate a certain vibe in the clubhouse. And I know that word is overused a lot on Rangers Twitter, but I mean it is true. If you have a clubhouse and a locker room that is essentially, fractured like it was with Gerard Gallant, you can have all the talent in the world. And you still won't get the achievable result unless there's some weird anomaly where the players are essentially running the asylum. When you look at what Laviolette has brought to the team, and just as a person in general, when it comes to bringing the team together, it's really done wonders. And then touching on Jonathan Quick, and you can also make the same argument for Blake Wheeler, even though he's been out for a bit, but the team seemed to kind of you know I don't want to say revolve or kind of just. I'm struggling to find the word, but they came together with Blake Wheeler, even though he wasn't, the greatest on the ice. But the thing that both those guys are able to bring is, like you said, championship pedigree. So when you have a guy like a Jonathan Quick, who you already know has been, giving Igor tips this whole season, and also just the guy to have in the room to kind of add some levity or just kind of bring things, to a certain perspective, that plays a part. And when you kind of put everything together, it really creates for a winning formula. And you can just see it with, how this team is around each other, how the post game videos, look in the locker room, the way that a lot of the guys talk about each other and how they talk about being prepared and this and that and the fourth. Jonathan Quick definitely helps with that. And to a smaller extent, so does Blake Wheeler. So looking at everything now, I'm just trying to think of who else we could think of. And the first person that comes to mind, obviously, is the man who scored the game-winning goal himself, is Vincent Trocheck. Now, I do remember very vividly, because Ranger Twitter is, and this is not me trying to dunk on Rangers Twitter, because there's a lot of good people on Rangers Twitter. It's just you see a lot, and it kind of sticks in your head. And I know we talked about this in our chat. Vincent Trocheck has been a godsend. And even though he struggled at the beginning of his first season as a Ranger, he's essentially fit like a glove for the last year and change. And I'm reading the post-game notes. Vincent Trocheck scored his first career playoff goal, and he tied the franchise record for the longest goal streak in playoff history, which was Cecil Dillon. He had 5 in 1933. He also established a Ranger record with his 4 consecutive playoff game with a power play goal, and that passes Rod Gilbert and matched by 3 others. So Vincent Trocheck. So I know in the chat, and obviously, we've also probably have, alluded to this on the blog and in many other places, Vincent Trocheck has essentially added to a team with really strong center depth. Philip Hedl, Mika Zibanejad, Vincent Trocheck, and obviously the Barclay Goodrow, now Alex Wenberg. So talk to me about the impact that Trocheck has had on this team, not only in this playoffs, but just kind of in this season in general, because, obviously with Philip Hedl, going down against, ironically enough, the Carolina Hurricanes, uh, him stepping up to be on probably one of the more powerful, dynamic offensive lines in the game. Just talk to me about his impact and, what you've liked from him, what you've seen that has stuck out to you, and what do you think will happen moving forward with him?
Okay, well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I am totally biased when it comes to Vincent Trocheck because I've been a fan of his since he was in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved his game. There was something about him. I couldn't put my finger on it, early in his career, but I just used to love watching him. I thought when he was a Panther, he was one of the best kept secrets in the league. Then, he went to Carolina, got exposed a little bit more, was playing on their second, third line, kind of a middle six role. And I remember when the Rangers signed him, how many Ranger fans did not want him because
Oh,
they either thought that he wasn't that good or because he was going to be Strom 2.0. And I was just like, wow, you guys have not watched this dude at all. I'm like, this dude is a 30 goal scorer, bona fide 30 goal scorer, and he could put up 70 to 75 points. And I'm like, sorry. If you put him with Artemi Panarin, he's an easy 75 point guy without even sweating. And last year got off to a little bit of a bumpy start, but the Hedl injury highlights exactly why you bring this guy in. Because in an ideal world, he would have been our third line center, which $5.5 million a year for a third line center in this NHL is a pretty good bargain.
mm-hmm.
So he can play in every situation. His forechecking ability is insane. He to me, he's a more skilled version of Jesper Fast. And we saw in Panarin's first couple of years as a Ranger, some of his best moments came with Jesper Fast on his line because
That's right.
Fast can do the dirty work, can forecheck, can go win puck battles on the board, and does all the things that opens up ice that helps allow Artemi Panarin to be Artemi Panarin. Trocheck does the exact same thing, but with elevated skill. that he can score 30 goals. He can play on your top power play. He can play on your top penalty kill. He can be one of your most effective and agitating players 5-on-5 because he's just going to do all the little things correctly that's going to drive opponents insane. He is so unheralded, and it's one of the best moves that Chris Drury has made since becoming GM because he just does everything right. And to quote a former New York Ranger head coach, he plays the right way.
Oh no, 100%. I agree with you. And I was one of those few who, like you, also did watch a lot of Vincent Trocheck before he was a New York Ranger, even before he was a Carolina Hurricane. You know, you alluded to him being with the Florida Panthers. And there was always something about him that just kind of, you saw that he had a bit of an edge to his game. You know, he had a lot of skill, a lot of speed, which is something that a lot of people, I would assume, don't really notice. But if there's one thing I can say about Trocheck too, is that he handles the puck very well. And that works for a guy like Artemi Panarin because they can move it around quick. He's also a really good passer too, you know. And then it obviously helps with Alexis Lafreniere just having some really stupid good playmaking ability. And obviously both Panarin and Trocheck have attributed to the success of Lafreniere this season. So yeah, I remember those receipts that, you know, when the Rangers signed Trocheck, that a lot of people didn't want him. They thought the term was too long. I thought that it was too much money at like 5 and change, which I thought, I mean, cap's going to go up in a couple of years. I mean, it's going to be a bargain, but like you said, he plays the game the right way, and you need guys like that. And it just also seems like everyone seems to just enjoy him in general. And I made this claim privately, but I guess I'll say it here. Um, when Barclay Goodrow ends up leaving the team within the next season or two, because we know what's going to happen, Vincent Trocheck's going to be the next one with an A on his chest. I can feel it. I can see it. They seem to, you know, if you notice towards the end of games when they have their handshake line, it's always Trocheck, Kreider, and Zibanejad are pretty much the last three out there. So then you factor in, you know, Panarin and Trouba, you know, that's probably going to be your leadership group for the next couple of years going down the line. Now, touching on someone I just mentioned. So this has kind of been a big thing because it always is when this player is involved. Because either some people don't seem to understand how hockey works and they just kind of want to yammer about, a certain player. And I'm talking about Jacob Trouba. Okay. So obviously, right before the season ended, Peter Laviolette made the switch to have Jacob Trouba play with Eric Gustafsson, moving Braden Schneider up to play with Keandre Miller, limiting his minutes and actually, fitting very well into the role. But a lot of people still seem to kind of ignore that fact. Now we fast forward to yesterday's game or Tuesday's game, and Jacob Trouba, who I was in the arena on Tuesday, and I just saw it coming from a mile away, and I'm chuckling at it because of how fast it happened and how people don't seem to understand how quick the game is, and they don't seem to understand what constitutes as a dirty hit and what constitutes as a clean hit. So obviously we know Marty Necas near the boards sees the Trouba train coming, and he essentially either ducks or he loses an edge. That caused Jacob Trouba to lift his arm up, and it looked like his elbow was going to go into his noggin, but that he was just kind of bracing for the boards because, newsflash, the boards are hard and it hurts. So that happens immediately. Twitter, sports Twitter, hockey Twitter just takes it and runs with it. And we have a bunch of news outlets, including the ones from Knock Knock Pittsburgh, basically trying to frame it into this sort of negative. Jacob Trouba is going to go and try and kill everyone. He's a headhunter and whatever. And its whole thing is weird because you look at the way he was trying to hit Necas. Just from what I saw, it looked like it was going to be a clean hit. I thought it was going to be a clean hit, but then, obviously the thing happened and people started to, and it's bad when Greg Wyshynski, noted Devils fan, Greg Wyshynski
is the voice of reason.
Is the voice of reason. So that's how it's bad. So I just want to ask, first of all, how ridiculous is this discourse? I was just mentioning to someone before that this whole Trouba discourse is just making me tired. But then also, do you think it was a dirty hit? Yes or no? I kind of know your answer, but just feel free to elaborate on that.
Oh my God. It wasn't. Look, if there's anything we know about Trouba, does Trouba hit hard? Absolutely. Does he always keep his elbow tucked and not drive through an opponent's head? Also, yes. And if you don't believe me, crybaby Penguins fans, go back and look at the film and do it without your Penguin glasses on, because the one thing about Trouba, and it's coach's tape whenever he lays a hit, because he always keeps his elbows tucked and he drives through the opponent's body. You're gonna get head contact on hits. It's just the nature of the game, but he doesn't headhunt. He's not Patrick Coletta or Matt Cook or Tom Wilson or anybody at Rafi Torres. He's none of those guys. Pee Wee hockey coaches should be showing film of Jacob Trouba laying body checks because the man actually hits correctly. It's literally the best part of his game.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I mean, the only thing that would have made this whole discourse worse is if it was Matt Rempe who was going for the hit. Like that's literally the only thing that would have made this whole discourse
Right.
more nauseating than what it was. Like
Right.
Penguins fans have to cry about something because they're not very good to begin with. They don't know how to handle the fact that they're going to suck for the next 15 years because
Mm-hmm.
they only became fans in 2005. So they've never seen a bad Penguins team. Well, get ready, Pittsburgh, because this is what it looked like when y'all were going to get moved to Kansas City. So buckle up and stop worrying about the New York Rangers. Look, and also Marty Natchez, I saw his comments. Oh, he was going to elbow me in the head. Dude, you're a clown. I'm so tired of the Carolina Hurricanes. I really am. I mean, they have such a ridiculous loser mentality. It's
Oh yes,
insane.
it
I,
is.
I just it makes me, look, I want the Rangers to win every season, every series that they're in. But my God, nothing would make me happier than to sweep these fraudulent Kings. They, 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 they are such losers with a loser mentality. I just can't wait to see them lose. Yeah, because that's what Jacob Trouba was trying to do. No, he's trying to lay a big hit, and I got to tell you, I actually think Nature's dumb. Which
Oh
smart
yeah.
on him. Smart on
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
I give you credit. I wouldn't want to get hit by Jacob Trouba.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
So good on him for being smart enough to realize the train was coming and he got off the tracks. But no, there was no intent to injure. He wasn't going to throw a headshot. This is just and thank you, Greg Wyshynski, for being the voice of reason. I really
Out of
can't
all
believe
people.
I'm. Yeah, I really can't believe I'm saying that. But thank you, Wyshynski, for being intelligent and telling everyone the truth. That look, I know he said True was a dirty player. I don't think True was a dirty player. Has he had some questionable moments? Absolutely. But overall, he's a solid hockey player who delivers hard bone crunching hits. And yes, hockey fans, those are still legal.
Right. And it amazes me that people are so they want the game to be tough and physical, but then when someone is actually tough and physical, like a Jacob Trouba and or a Matt Rempe, then all of a sudden everybody's arms are up in the air. Meanwhile, a lot of these people have players on their teams, knock knock Tom Wilson, knock knock Matt Cook, who have been quote unquote absolved of a lot of the stuff they've done, and they've done things that are way dirtier. But then the minute Jacob Trouba actually tries to reinforce the mantra of bringing physicality back into the game, you know what it really is? People just don't like to see their players get rocked, and nobody wants to see their team's players get rocked. But it's all part of the game, like you said. The hits are still clean, and I want to touch on one thing about Rempe before we wrap up. So I think it was Kelly Sutherland during the game when Matt Rempe got into a bit of a situation. Almost immediately, he ran straight to him and kind of pushed him to the side. And then in one of the games, Matt Rempe got called for interference when he got pushed into the goalie. So it kind of seems as if, and this happened a lot in the Capital series too. And props to Peter Laviolette for actually keeping Rempe in the lineup, even though he didn't play at all the last 3 periods of
He joined Stu
game
Bickle
two.
and he joined Stu Bickle in Rangers history.
Right, just sitting on the bench. Right. No, I had the second to think about that. I had to take a second to think about that, and you're right. So I think Rempe has a bit of an unfair target on his back, and I mean, we could do a whole podcast about just the awful refereeing that we've witnessed, and this is not just us being biased. I mean, it's not just this series; it's a lot of the other series that have gone on. But obviously, us being Ranger fans, we see it magnified a lot more in the team that we watch. So just to touch on real quick on Matt Rempe. So obviously, he has a target on his back. Everyone seems to want to go after him. Um, we made a prediction in the previous podcast that we were gonna see either Rempe was gonna get pulled out of the lineup with the Rangers' first loss or the first game in Carolina. So I think somebody said he was gonna get pulled after game 2, but it seems as if Laviolette is gonna keep Rempe in the lineup. So just overall, do you think Matt Rempe has a target on his back? Do you think he's being unfairly treated? And how do you think the Rangers are going to utilize him going forward if he decides to stay in the lineup?
Oh, he's 100% got a target on his back, and he's definitely being mistreated by the officials. Game one, the goalie interference call was soft. Game two, Kelly Sutherland darting at him, but then Andrei Svechnikov after the whistle can slash Igor Shesterkin. Ain't no problem. That ain't no problem.
Nope.
I didn't see nothing. Like,
Nope.
so there's definitely a double-edged sword there. And, kudos to Matt Rempe because he could very easily just do something stupid in his limited minutes that he has. He could very easily do something stupid, get into a fight, deliver a really bad hit, and go outside the lines. And he doesn't. He's shown maturity. He understands what's going on. And kudos, that's the Rangers staff and the Rangers players just for letting them know. Look, just don't do anything stupid. Just play your game, play hard, keep rattling them mentally, but just stay within your lane and everything will be okay. I just there was nothing wrong with what he did to Frederick Anderson in game 2. He gave him a snow shower. How many times have we seen guys give the opposing goalie a snow shower? And I've never in my life seen an official respond that way that Kelly Sutherland did. It was an absolute joke. But it's just because he's developed this reputation. And game 1, it was a reputation call, right or wrong. So it hurts the Rangers in the sense that Laviolette really can't use Rempe. And I don't think he trusts him yet. I mean, we even saw him not use Will Cooley later in the game on Tuesday night in certain spots just because he was shortening his bench a little bit, which is understandable. You've seen that before. But I think Rempe's played really well. And honestly, I think having him in the lineup because of the Canes' undisciplined nature and just because of how easy it is to get under their skin, having Rempe out there is fantastic because he doesn't even have to do much to get them upset.
No.
It's just poking them with a stick. I can see with the first loss, Laviolette switches up the lineup, but I think he's going to keep running what's been working. And I gotta say this: I don't put stock into the whole one guy makes the whole team tougher type deal, but there's definitely something with Matt Rempe with this lineup. I do think that the Rangers feel a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, knowing that they have that guy in their corner. Because you see in scrums around the net, it's not one guy pulling somebody out of a scrum or somebody's going after Igor. It's not one guy or two guys going over to do. It's 5 guys. It's everybody on the ice. And that's definitely now it's either a mindset from the coaching staff or it's because, they've seen what Rempe has done for the team and how he's willing to sacrifice himself that, okay, if the kid can do it, we all can do it. But it's one of those things that you see with championship teams. Like we've seen it with the Tampa Bay Lightning for years. It's not just one guy in Tampa. If you go after one of them, you're going after all of them. And the Rangers have that same kind of mentality now that even Artemi Panarin, and you saw it in the Washington series, laying that vicious but beautiful reverse hit on TJ Oshie. Panarin would have never done that last year. So I do think there is something with Matt Rempe in the lineup that this team definitely carries a little bit more swag, and that they know, okay, look, you're gonna mess with one of us, you're messing with the whole group. So watch how you tread here.
Right. And no, you make a very good point when it comes to that, and you can tell they have a little bit more jump with Rempe just being there. Um, it kind of seems like a lot of the guys tend to rally around him. And it really reminds me of, Ryan Reeves, his first year here. Granted, the difference, one of the big differences between the two is that Rempe has better underlying numbers to begin with. But I feel as if he brings a similar quality on the ice. And it's one of those things you can't really explain. Matt Rempe's not going to score you 50 goals. He's probably not even going to score you 20 on a good season. But it just kind of seems, he brings something to a game that hasn't been around for a very long time. And a lot of successful teams tend to thrive off of having a guy who can be physical like he can. And, Rempe's no pylon either. He's a big guy and, he can play, do well in fourth line minutes. So he can be useful in many situations. But he's not a barn burner. But he has this weird effect. They play well with him in the lineup, even if he's glued to the bench. They play very well. And not to say that they wouldn't play well with him, but I think the team operates a bit differently with a guy like Brodzinski or with a guy like Blake Wheeler in the lineup. And this is no knock on Brodzinski or Wheeler. Both are two very good players in their own right, and I like them a lot. But I just think it's something different. And it happened with Ryan Reeves, and now it's happening with Matt Rempe. And this is also something I alluded to in our chat, is that I think Laviolette likes having the option of rotating certain people around because that kind of goes into the whole shortening the bench thing. But it really does work out because then it allows you to or allows Laviolette rather to have different matchups for different things. So, for example, I noticed a lot when they were in the defensive zone on a face-off, it would be Barclay Goodrow, um, Jimmy Vesey, and like a Will Cooley, or sometimes Vinny Trocheck would go there, or sometimes Mika Zibanejad would take a shift. So it allows more, opportunities for your skilled players, but it also still keeps Matt Rempe on the roster. So, maybe they change it with the first loss. But I just think that Rempe really brings a lot, and it just sucks that he does have a target on his back. It really was more prominent in the Washington series, which kind of annoyed me, but that's beside the point. But anyways, so now right before we wrap up this episode of Live from the Blue Seats, let's just quickly touch on what he thinks going to happen in the next two games. So now, the day that this episode gets released, they're going to be in Carolina. The game is going to be broadcasted on TNT, thank goodness. And the Rangers pretty much have a tough task ahead of them. They're going back home. The PNC Arena with its piped-in crowd noise is going to potentially be some sort of distraction. How do you see the Rangers faring out in Carolina?
I mean, the Rangers did what they were supposed to at the Garden by protecting home court and protecting, making sure that they didn't lose serve on home ice. So they did their job there. Now all they got to do in Carolina is win the one. They just got to find a way to split, get it back to the Garden for Game 5, and take care of business again at home. Carolina is a great home team. They really are. They love playing on their own ice. I have this feeling because if you're Carolina, and I know a lot of people have tried saying that the Rangers have been outplayed the first two games. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would
Right.
definitely say more so game two than game one. But I thought pretty much the series has been even across the board. But even if you want to take the route that Carolina has been the better team through two games, well, how would you like to be Carolina then? If you're thinking, hey, we've been the better team through two games, but we still are down 0-2, that's got to be deflating. They're going to come out like their hair is on fire the first 10, 15 minutes of game three. The Rangers really just need to batten down the hatches, play smart team hockey the first 10, 15 minutes, weather that initial storm, and then let the game settle in. Because if they can survive the first 10 to 15 minutes of game three, it's really going to settle into Carolina's head that, oh boy, we really have a problem here. Because we all know Freddie's going to give up a bad one. We've already seen
Mhm.
him do it twice.
Yep.
So it's not going to take much to beat Freddie Anderson. The Rangers need to be patient, counterpunch when ready, and just keep having that doubt creep into the mind of the Carolina Hurricanes because they're whether they want to admit it or not, there is doubt there. They're over on the power play. They know it. They're going to start gripping their sticks tighter on the man advantage, especially at home. So, and they know that if they take a penalty, the Rangers are going to make them pay. So
Right.
so all the pressure now is on Carolina. So the Rangers just have to know that, play discipline, play smart hockey like they've been doing, and just keep letting Carolina beat themselves in so many ways. I really do believe that the Rangers can wind up sweeping this series. I really do think this series could be over Saturday night.
You know, so I tend to have two sides to myself. I have my rational side, which is the predominant side, where I want to say that, like you alluded to, it's going to go five, maybe six. The Rangers will steal one in Carolina. And then, lose one in Carolina, steal one in Carolina, lose one, and then come back home and finish the series there. But for some reason, and basically piggybacking off what you're saying, I have this very it's just for some reason I feel like they could do it. And like you said, it all depends on how they manage the first 10 minutes. And I love the adage that is commonly thrown around is basically, survive the first 10 minutes and then it's basically a toss up, really. I'm paraphrasing that, of course. But it is true, though, because teams tend to kind of have that initial surge of coming right out of the gate. You're pumped up from the introductions and the national anthems, and, you got the juices flowing. But then as it begins to kind of peter out, which is essentially what happened, on Tuesday night, was Carolina came out strong on the jump. And then the Rangers essentially matched them after a certain point, and Carolina just couldn't keep up as the Rangers played the long game. But the rational side tells me this is going to go 5 or 6, but the irrational side, which is agreeing with the situation you just mentioned, I think they could sweep because the Rangers have shown that they can play in Carolina. And to think about it, also, you want to talk about another home ice advantage. If there's one thing Ranger fans are very good at is filling other people's arenas, especially when the team that they're facing is wearing red, if you catch my drift. so, 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 that's a very multifaceted thing there. But, every time, even in 22, when they were down there, all you saw were, a lot of Ranger fans. So I think that could also help too, because even though you're a visiting player, and let's say you're an Edmonton Oilers fan, right, and you go to, let's say, the Prudential Center, you're not going to see a swath of Oilers jerseys. You're going to see like one or two guys. Everybody's going to be drunk that's wearing the same colors as you, and you're fist bumping from one side of the section to the other. But when it comes to the Rangers, especially in places like Raleigh, North Carolina, New Jersey, the New York Islanders, and anywhere that's nearby, or even just all around the country, it's always these large swaths of Ranger fans. So I think that'll also play into it, and it kind of reinforces my irrational belief that this series is over, like you said on Saturday. So my rational thinking says 5 or 6, but the irrational one in me, the crazy fan that wants everything to go the way that I want, and they're gonna sweep. And honestly, like you said, it can happen. But anyways,
I
we'll
mean,
have to wait.
I just think that Carolina's so for as good as they are, they come across as very mentally fragile,
No, they
especially
do.
when they're playing a team that's either on their level or better than them. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to respond to that. They
Right.
really do not know how to respond to getting punched in the face, which is
Mm-hmm.
surprising for me with Rob Brindamore as their head coach. Because Brindamore, as a player, he would punch you in the face. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we saw him do it a lot when he was part of the Flyers. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where their mental weakness comes from, but just when I read their quotes and I just see the stuff that they're saying in the media, they already are coming. They're coming across very much like Joel Embiid in the Knicks series.
Oh, jeez. Oh, good. Actually, that's a good comparison. But you're right though, because you know one of the things that I've noticed, yeah, and a lot of the Capitals did this too, but that's a completely different team. And this is not just from this year. It's also from prior seasons too. Just like the way that that franchise conducts themselves, it just kind of seems as if there's just a lot of excuses and finger pointing. And like you said, with Rod Brindamore being a former player who would punch you in the face, it's kind of shocking, But I think maybe he's doing that just to kind of rally around the boys. But it doesn't seem like they have a lot of grit, but it doesn't seem like they have a lot of guys that would, be willing to kind of punch you right in the face back. Then you're just thinking about it. Maybe Jordan Martinook, but you really think, you know, Keandre Miller's going to be intimidated by Tony D'Angelo or Brady Shea or,
Absolutely not.
no, Andrei Svechnikov, who had his, clock rung when Alexander Ovechkin, showed him a lesson when he tried to challenge him. Like, no, a Sebastian Aho, none of those guys are going to get into your face. You look at like some of the guys that the Rangers have, Will Cooley, Matt Rempe, Vincent Trocheck is another. Vincent Trocheck, just going back to him, and a lot of scrums this season. I think I forget what team it was, but there was a couple of instances in the season where Trocheck would get into a scrum and then purposely like laugh in people's faces. That's like diabolical right there, but it's fantastic.
I love how he gave Gensel the thumbs up.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that. You don't really see Carolina doing that. Jordan Stahl, he's old, by hockey player standards. I'm just like Jordan Martinook is really the only one I'm thinking of. Maybe Stefan Nason, but Stefan Nason's just a depth scorer. You don't see anyone on that team. Jalen Chatfield, maybe. Just ringing off the names in my head. Max Comtois, like, come on. The
Max
Rangers have
Quanta, he's got to be worried about the next time he gets hit about getting another concussion. He definitely
right.
won't do that. Like, I mean, even with Chris Kreider hasn't fought many times in his career, but he's not afraid to have that kind of edge.
No, absolutely not. And it's also evident with him being in front of the net on the power play. He's able to muscle his way in. And also, just from when you see him on the ice, he's also a complete psychopath. Both physically and also, personality wise on the ice. You just see him getting into the middle of things. Ryan Lindgren, there's another one who will punch you right in the face. So it's a good point that you make about the Hurricanes being mentally weak, because it doesn't seem like they have many guys that could actually, you know, combat that. And that's a really big part, of playoff hockey, is having the ability to kind of will your way through. It was different in the Islanders series with the Hurricanes, where they were just able to just muscle their way in. Islanders not a very good team, fringe playoff team at best. Their defense was also incredibly suspect, and they have a lot of guys that are basically on the outs, and Carolina was just skill wise more better, a lot better than they were. So they're kind of able to get away with being a little bit laissez-faire in the defensive zone and exploiting a lot of the weaknesses of the Islanders, but you can't do that with the Rangers. And the Rangers have that extra physical edge, when it comes to that. So no, I don't think anyone on Carolina can really match sort of that, and as you hear the adage so many times, it's just the grit, that they have. Because at any point, pretty much anyone on the team can, lay a huge body check or, get in your face or whatever. And again, that also just adds to the fact that Laviolette's got these guys buying into everything, so they're willing to fight for one another, and that's a very successful component to a lot of cup winning teams. Anyways, so that's going to be a wrap on this episode of Live from the Blue Seats. Rob and Dave and Becky will be back at some point. We're all adults and we're all busy and we have our lives, and but the gang will be all here at some point again. So we miss them and we'll see them again soon. Nick, thank you again for coming on and taking the time to be on the podcast again. We'll definitely have you on again, soon, when all of our lives are not, absolutely crazy. Because even me, I'm guilty of it too, But anyways, this has been Live from the Blue Seats. Follow us at Blue Seats Live on Twitter. You can follow Nick at Brooklyn Joker 90. I think he spells it a bit differently, but
Yeah,
he's
just
easy to
Brooklyn.
find.
Yeah, it's a Brooklyn abbreviated. Not too
Yeah,
hard
so
to find. Yeah.
it's Brooklyn abbreviated Joker 90, and I'm at JL Shapiro 8. You can follow Dave at Blue Sea Blogs and look for a lot more content on the site. And we really hope the Rangers can fulfill our crazy fantasies of sweeping the Hurricanes, because we would enjoy nothing more of the sort. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week or as soon as we can. Thank you very much, and let's go Rangers.